chosen ones. The streets know who you are now. The truth teller, the protector, the one who doesn't fold. Recent psychological studies reveal that when someone carries divine frequency mixed with unbreakable conviction, you become a walking disruption to every comfortable lie in your vicinity. There are people in boardrooms changing the subject when your name comes up. Those in power thought your truth would fade, but what was discovered instead has them losing sleep at night. Your influence multiplies like wildfire, and there's no extinguisher big enough to contain what you've started. You've become known as the one who fearlessly exposes truth and stands up for those who can't defend themselves. But here's what those in power don't want you to realize yet. What makes authority figures truly fear you isn't just your courage, it's how you've sparked courage in others. Your actions created a ripple effect that's turning individual stands into collective movements. One voice became many, and now those controlling systems can't ignore what everyone's talking about. You've become the crown-wearing champion people point to when someone says, "That's how it's done." The streets are alive with stories about you. In coffee shops, people reference the time you exposed that corrupt supervisor. In university hallways, students whisper about how you dismantled that professor's toxic authority. In corporate circles, executives get nervous when someone mentions your approach to calling out discrimination. Your reputation precedes you now, and it carries weight that makes the dishonest uncomfortable. What's fascinating is how your presence has become a litmus test for authenticity. Watch how people react when you enter a space. The genuine ones light up, the corrupt ones shut down. You've become a walking detector of character, and that detection system is more accurate than any background check or reference letter. The streets know this about you, and that's why your name carries power even in rooms you've never entered. That's exactly why everyone's talking about you now. But this is just the beginning of what you need to understand about the seismic shift you've created. Because what happened to you in those rooms where you first spoke up is about to make perfect sense, and the pattern you're about to discover will explain everything that's been happening since. Authority figures can't maintain their masks around you anymore. The smirks, the fake concern, the deflective charm, it all unravels the moment you walk in. Their tone changes, their posture stiffens, and powerful people start performing desperately, hoping you won't notice the things they worked so hard to keep hidden. But you do, you always do. You see through their scripts, you read between their pauses, you know exactly when kindness is a cover and when power is being misused. You don't tolerate silent abuse, and corruption knows it. You don't normalize manipulation just because it's wrapped in smiles and status. You call it what it is, even when no one else will. That's why corrupt leaders avoid your eyes. That's why manipulators change the subject. That's why abusers try to twist the narrative before you even open your mouth, because the moment you speak, the illusion is dead. Your mere presence has become an accountability system no one signed up for. Corrupt systems used to operate with impunity, confident that social politeness would protect harmful behaviors. Authority counted on everyone's desire to avoid conflict, to keep actions unchallenged. But you disrupted that entire ecosystem by refusing to prioritize comfort over truth. The streets know about your supernatural ability to make people confess without interrogation. How many times have you watched someone stumble over their own words, contradict their previous statements, or accidentally reveal their true motive simply because your energy demanded honesty? It's not magic, it's what happens when divine purpose meets human deception. You've spoken up in rooms where silence was the price of safety. You've made people uncomfortable not by attacking but by refusing to play along. And what you may not realize yet is that your refusal to participate is louder than any speech. It's defiance in its purest form. You are the pause that makes people rethink. You are the presence that holds mirrors to faces too used to seeing only what's convenient. Your individual acts of courage were actually setting up dominoes in a pattern that would eventually topple entire systems of control. Each time you refused to stay silent, you were building toward a moment that would change everything. You weren't trying to make waves, you are the wave. Your truth moves through people and leaves nothing untouched. Some try to resist it, pretend it didn't hit, but deep down, even the most corrupt knows something has shifted. Deception feels exposed, and the truth is, it is. You didn't come into rooms with an agenda, you came in with clarity, and clarity is dangerous in a world addicted to distortion. Corrupt systems fear your eyes because you're not fooled. Manipulation fears your silence because it isn't ignorance, it's calculation. You wait, you watch, and when you speak, it's not to wound, it's to reveal. That's what makes power structures afraid. You don't shout to be heard, you speak to be felt. And once truth is felt, it can't be forgotten. Authority will call it tension, corruption will call it drama, but what you bring is justice in its rawest form, uncomfortable, undeniable, and utterly necessary. You never set out to be a protector, but you became one the moment you refused to stay silent when others turned away. You turned toward the fire when everyone else pretended not to see. You locked eyes with truth and stood your ground. Your wave effect has created a new social dynamic everywhere you go. People prepare differently for meetings when your presence is expected. Conversations shift when your involvement is anticipated. The dishonest start rehearsing their explanations before you even ask questions. You've become the storm corruption tracks on its personal weather radar, constantly adjusting behavior to avoid getting caught in your truth. What's remarkable is how your influence spreads through networks you're not even part of. Stories about your courage get retold, adapted, and applied in contexts you'll never hear about. A parent stands up to school bullying because your example was remembered. A community member challenges local corruption because your model showed it was possible. An employee refuses unethical demands because your blueprint gives them a framework for resistance. Every single confrontation, every moment of resistance, every time corrupt systems tried to break you down, was actually building your authority. Power structures were unknowingly forging the very weapon that would eventually dismantle their control. The pressure applied was creating the diamond that would cut through their deception. You didn't just speak, you defended, and that's what changed everything. Because some people aren't afraid of lies, the corrupt are afraid of what happens when someone finally calls out their deception. You've stood in spaces where injustice dressed itself in politeness. You've heard the mocking disguised as humor, the disrespect hidden under tone, the cruelty smoothed over with fake apologies, and instead of letting it slide, you said something. Maybe you didn't raise your voice, maybe you didn't need to, but your words, sharp, clear, and unwavering, cut through the noise like a blade. You didn't make it personal, you made it known. In your workplace, you checked a supervisor who thought their title gave them permission to dehumanize. In your family, you shut down the relative who always crosses lines and laughs like it's harmless. In your social circles, you defended someone everyone else conveniently forgot. You've drawn lines in the sand while others stood behind them, waiting for anyone to do what you did. And when you did it, everything shifted. You've made enemies not because you were cruel, but because you told the truth in rooms built on denial. Some people have never been held accountable in their lives, and your presence shattered that immunity. The precision of your interventions is what makes them so devastating. You don't attack character, you expose behavior. You don't make personal attacks, you reveal patterns. You don't destroy people, you dismantle systems of harm that people were hiding behind. This surgical approach to truth-telling is what makes you so feared and so effective. Your reputation for protection has spread through underground networks of the vulnerable. People who can't defend themselves know your name. Victims of workplace bullying whisper about the time you intervened. Targets of family abuse share stories about your boundary-setting techniques. Those suffering under corrupt authority structures study your methods for standing up to power. The streets know about your legendary confrontations, not because you seek them out, but because injustice seeks you out, and you never back down. You've become the emergency contact for truth, the person people call when someone unbreakable is needed to stand beside them. Your phone doesn't ring with gossip, it rings with SOS calls from people who need someone who won't fold under pressure. What corrupt systems fear most is your ability to stay calm while dismantling their arguments. You don't get emotional when exposing lies. You get methodical. You don't get angry when revealing corruption. You get strategic. You don't get reactive when facing manipulation. You get precise. This controlled power is what makes you absolutely unstoppable. You weren't aggressive, you were precise. You weren't emotional, you were exact. And that's why it stung. That's why corruption still talks about it. That's why manipulators haven't forgotten. Someone still flinches when your name is mentioned, not because you were wrong, but because you were right, and the corrupt hate how clearly you proved it. Someone out there is still salty, still trying to rewrite the narrative, still searching for a way to paint you as the villain. But deep down, corruption knows you weren't fighting for yourself, you were fighting for someone who couldn't. And that's a power manipulation will never understand. What power structures didn't expect is how many people were silently grateful, people who didn't know how to speak up, people who thought no one would ever defend them. You did without asking for applause, without making it about you. You acted, and in doing so, you gave others permission to believe better treatment was deserved. Your precision strikes have become case studies in effective truth-telling. The way you dismantled that toxic manager's authority with carefully chosen questions, how you exposed that corrupt official's lies by simply asking for story repetition, the time you revealed a predator's true nature by refusing to accept charm as evidence of character. Each intervention was surgical, no collateral damage to innocent parties, no destruction of anything worth preserving, just the clean removal of harmful elements from healthy systems. You've mastered the art of targeted truth that heals rather than hurts, that builds rather than breaks, that protects rather than punishes. The streets remember your legendary moments not for their drama, but for their effectiveness. How you turned a hostile meeting into a productive discussion by refusing to engage with hostility and focusing only on solutions. How you transformed a toxic workplace culture by consistently modeling respectful interaction while never accepting disrespect toward yourself or others. Your approach has inspired a new philosophy of resistance, strategic truth-telling that achieves maximum impact with minimum destruction. People study your methods, trying to understand how you stay so calm under pressure, how you choose exactly the right moment to speak, how you know precisely which words will cut through deception without cutting down the deceiver. You're not a rebel without a cause, you're a force with one. You're not stirring drama, you're correcting imbalance. And no matter how motives get twisted, the impact remains. You weren't trying to save the world, but you did save someone. And in a world that tries to erase the defenders, your truth still echoes louder than silence. You're not just another voice in the crowd. When you speak, the temperature changes, the air gets thicker, the masks slip faster, and the ones who usually talk over everyone else suddenly don't know what to say. It's not because you shout, it's not because you dominate, it's because your words carry weight and your presence carries consequence. Corruption can feel it. The shift, the power you hold is disruptive, and that's exactly why fear exists. Corrupt systems fear you because you can't be bought. You're not chasing approval, you're not flattered by flattery, you don't play nice with manipulation, and you don't barter your values for convenience. That makes you unpredictable to corruption, and unpredictability in someone principled is the most dangerous kind. Power structures can't figure you out. Getting ahead of your next move is impossible. All corruption knows is wherever you stand, people start questioning what acceptance has been demanded of them. Your influence is contagious. You ask one question and suddenly others are asking their own. You refuse one injustice and others find courage to do the same. You make people believe powerlessness isn't permanent and nothing threatens control like the loss of fear. Your frequency operates on a level that bypasses conscious defenses and speaks directly to people's dormant courage. You walk into rooms and suddenly people remember spines exist. You participate in conversations and suddenly others remember voices can be used. You witness injustice, and suddenly everyone remembers choices are available. The streets know about your electromagnetic effect on social dynamics, how meetings become more honest when your presence is felt, how bullies become nervous when you're around, how victims find strength when your watching is known. You've become a human catalyst for truth, and that catalytic effect is reshaping every environment you enter. Your ability to shift frequency extends beyond confrontation. You elevate conversations by asking deeper questions. You transform shallow networking into meaningful connection by being genuinely interested in people's authentic experiences. You turn competitive environments into collaborative ones by modeling vulnerability and celebrating others' strengths. People have started inviting you to situations specifically because your presence will improve the outcome. Difficult conversations become productive when you're there to model respectful dialogue. Toxic meetings become solution-focused when your presence redirects energy toward progress. Corrupt processes become transparent when your involvement asks the right questions. This is where the pattern becomes undeniable. You don't just inspire change, you provoke it. And in the world of corruption, that's a threat. You've made it harder for harmful systems to operate in shadows, harder for manipulation to pretend control is earned rather than imposed, harder for abuse to convince others that silence equals safety. Because now, thanks to you, people are watching differently, patterns are being noticed, dots are being connected, voices are speaking up. That's not coincidence, that's your influence in motion. Corruption underestimated you. The assumption was that if you were ignored long enough, quieting down would happen. If discrediting occurred, others would fall in line. But the opposite happened. People listened more, watched more, respected you more, because integrity is magnetic, and yours is undeniable. You'll be labeled a problem to avoid admitting you're a solution. You'll be called too much because how little corrupt systems have been doing gets exposed. Your influence will be framed as arrogance, but the truth is known. The truth is your power isn't loud, it's clean. It cuts through noise, it awakens people, and that's why your name gets whispered when you're thought not to be listening. You didn't ask to be a leader, you became one by being unshakable. And now, whether corrupt systems like it or not, a reckoning with what your presence makes possible is forced, a world where power answers to truth, not the other way around. Your catalyst effect has created a new type of social awareness wherever you've been. People who never questioned authority before are now asking for explanations. Individuals who always accepted excuses are now demanding accountability. Groups that once tolerated disrespect are now setting boundaries. You've awakened the sleeping giant of collective conscience. Your awakening catalyst effect operates on multiple levels simultaneously. You awaken individual courage in those who witness your example. You awaken systemic awareness in organizations that experience your scrutiny. You awaken collective conscience in communities that benefit from your protection. You awaken spiritual recognition in people who see divine purpose expressed through human action. The streets talk about the before and after effect of your involvement in any situation. Before your arrival, people accepted the unacceptable. After you spoke up, the unacceptable became unthinkable. Before your intervention, victims suffered in silence. After your protection, silence became impossible. Before your questioning of the system felt invincible. After your challenge, the system became accountable. What makes your catalyst effect so powerful is its sustainability. You don't just create temporary change that reverts when you leave. You activate permanent transformation that continues growing after you're gone. The courage you spark in others becomes their own, not borrowed strength that requires your presence to maintain. This isn't just personality. This isn't just learned behavior. What runs through you is divine by design. The way you see cracks in polished systems, the way your spirit recoils at injustice others have normalized, that's not random. That's a gift. You were built to disrupt, born to unsettle foundations of power that have stood unchallenged for too long. You weren't created to conform, you were wired to challenge what's been blindly accepted. Others may walk away, you stay. Not because it's easy, but because your soul won't let you abandon the truth. That's not just defiance, that's calling. You're not just someone with good instincts, you're a divine whistleblower. You were sent to shine light in rooms where darkness was left unbothered for too long. You see what others ignore. You call it out before anyone else dares to name it. And when the backlash comes, you endure it with strength, even if you sometimes don't understand. That's not luck, that's protection. You are shielded by something higher, something greater than politics, perception, or public opinion. You didn't choose the battles, but the battles keep choosing you. Not because you're confrontational, but because your existence alone exposes what's broken. And every time you speak up, every time you step forward, the invisible is made visible. Your divine recognition comes with supernatural discernment that operates beyond human understanding. You sense deception before it's spoken. You feel manipulation before it's attempted. You recognize corruption before it's exposed. This spiritual early warning system is what makes you so effective as a protector and so feared by those who operate in darkness. The streets know about your prophetic accuracy in identifying character. How you warned people about that charming narcissist before true nature was revealed. How you sensed corruption in that popular leader before the scandal broke. How you recognized the predator hiding behind religious authority before victims came forward. Your ability to see through facades isn't cynicism, it's a divine gift. Your spiritual antenna picks up frequencies that others miss. You sense when someone's kindness is calculated rather than genuine. You feel when someone's apology is manipulation rather than remorse. You know when someone's vulnerability is performance rather than authenticity. This supernatural detection system protects not just you, but everyone in your sphere of influence. Your calling operates through perfect timing that seems coincidental but never actually is. You show up at exactly the right moment to prevent harm. You speak up at precisely the right time to save someone's dignity. You intervene at exactly the moment when intervention will have maximum protective impact and minimum destructive consequence. You've shaken structures without even trying, just by standing in your truth. The attacks against you have never been random. The smears, the whispers, the attempts to isolate, these are signs, markers that you're exactly where you're meant to be. People don't throw stones at buildings that aren't standing. You get targeted because you threaten what corruption has built on fear, silence, and control. Your courage calls cowardice into question. Your presence puts pressure on parts of corruption that have been hidden, even from themselves. You've exposed lies just by refusing to participate in them. You've disrupted systems by refusing to pretend. And whether or not you ever get credit for it, the shift has already begun. People are thinking differently because of you. People are choosing differently because of what you stood for. You didn't apply for this role, but God saw something in you that could carry it, something unshakable, something holy. That's why the path feels heavy. That's why you feel set apart, because you are. You're not just here to comfort the wounded. You're here to warn the ones doing the wounding that their time is up. You weren't made for quiet compliance. You were born to shake the ground beneath unjust feet, and you're doing exactly what you were sent here to do. The streets recognize your authority before you even speak. Your reputation arrives ahead of you, clearing the path and preparing the atmosphere. Corrupt systems start adjusting their behavior when your involvement becomes known. Victims start feeling hope when your support becomes available. Truth-tellers start feeling less alone when your example becomes visible. Your authority operates through influence rather than force. You don't have to demand respect, you command it naturally. You don't have to insist on honesty, you inspire it automatically. You don't have to enforce boundaries, you embody them so clearly that violation becomes obviously inappropriate. You don't use your influence to gain personal advantage, you use it to create collective benefit. You don't leverage your power to accumulate more power, you distribute it to empower others. You don't hoard your authority to maintain control, you share it to build community. The manifestation of your authority is creating a new template for leadership that operates on principle rather than position, on character rather than charisma, on integrity rather than image. People are studying your model and discovering that true authority comes from alignment with truth rather than accumulation of titles. Corrupt systems tried to label you dramatic, difficult, rebellious, not because it was true, but because it was easier than facing themselves. If you could make the issue, then confronting the power games, the manipulation, the harm done behind closed doors could be avoided. The hope was that by tarnishing your name, your words could be stripped of their power. But truth doesn't need a perfect messenger to carry weight. And your truth, it echoed. Isolation was attempted, whispers were spread behind your back, distance was created, you were painted as unstable just because tolerance of the intolerable stopped. And yet you didn't crumble, you didn't retreat. You stood still in your truth while corruption scrambled to protect its illusion. That's what haunts corrupt systems, the fact that you didn't need a mob to be powerful, you just needed your voice and the courage to use it. How much you were holding back was underestimated. Your silence was thought to mean surrender, but what you were really doing was watching, studying, calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike, not with vengeance but with clarity. And when the time came, your truth was so clear, so sharp, so undeniable that no defense existed. It couldn't be out-talked, it couldn't be outrun. All corruption could do was panic. Your legend building happens through stories that spread organically, through communities you've touched. The narrative of your courage gets retold in increasingly mythic terms, not because the facts get exaggerated, but because the impact was genuinely that profound. People need heroes, and you became one by simply refusing to stop being yourself when being yourself became dangerous. The streets build your legend through collective memory of moments when someone finally stood up. Your confrontations become reference points for what's possible when courage meets truth. Your interventions become case studies for how individual action can create systemic change. Your example becomes inspiration for others to discover their own power. Your legend spreads through underground networks of the marginalized and oppressed, carrying hope to people who thought no one would ever defend them. It spreads through circles of the conscientious who were waiting for someone to show them how to act on their values. It spreads through communities of the awakening who needed proof that standing up was survivable. The building of your legend is creating a cultural shift where truth-telling is being reclaimed as heroic rather than problematic, where protection is being celebrated as necessary rather than optional, where courage is being recognized as contagious rather than isolated. Your individual actions are becoming collective inspiration. Look, you already know the game is rigged, and if you're paying attention, you know the walls are closing in. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. When you live by the day at the market's command, where profit and property rule the land, to be heard, to be held, to be dealt a fair hand, these are the things that a people demand, and we hear you. The Obsidian Inner Order has paywalls, yes, those who stand with us, who fuel this mission. They give us ammunition to fight the Archons, to push back against the machine, to go deeper, to uncover more. And as our thank you, paid members get access to a 1-hour live, personalized weekly group tarot reading guidance, insight and clarity for the road ahead. But kicking a man for being down on the floor, that's something we cannot ignore. That's why starting today, you can steal the Astral Atom exclusive daily newsletter for free, no paywall, no catch. Just join the Patreon free tier, link in the description. This is the start of our conversation with you, and it's bi-directional. You can reply to any email we send you. We'll read it, we'll hear you, and we'll do our best to get an answer to you from the universe itself. If you can support, we need you. If you can't, take what's free. The Obsidian Inner Order is open. Now let's get back to work. You're not here for the drama. Corruption creates that. You're not here to destroy, you're here to reveal, and every time suppression of your voice was attempted, it became louder. Every time you were pushed aside, more people started paying attention. Because in trying to silence you, corruption confirmed exactly how dangerous your truth really is. Let manipulation twist it, let deception talk. The ones who matter know what you stand for. The ones watching in silence have already started shifting because of you, and whether admission happens or not, gratitude exists that you didn't stay quiet. Because your voice didn't just break the silence, it broke the system. Corruption was too afraid to name, and now no matter what gets attempted, you can't be unheard. You didn't raise your hand for this. You didn't stand at the front and declare, "Follow me." But following happened anyway, because leadership doesn't always begin with ambition. It begins with action, and your actions have spoken volumes. Every time you stood up, others took note. Every time you told the truth, others found courage to stop lying to themselves. You didn't choose the spotlight chose you. And now it's undeniable, you're being called to lead. Your system-breaking power operates through exposure rather than explosion. You don't destroy corrupt structures through force, you reveal their contradictions through questions. You don't tear down harmful systems through violence, you dismantle them through transparency. You don't demolish oppressive institutions through anger, you dissolve them through truth. The streets know about your legendary ability to break systems simply by refusing to participate in their dysfunction. How you transformed a toxic workplace by consistently modeling respect while refusing to accept disrespect. How you changed a corrupt organization by persistently asking for accountability while providing it yourself. How you shifted a harmful culture by embodying the change you wanted to see while never compromising your standards. Your system breaking creates space for something better to emerge. You don't just tear down what's harmful, you clear ground for what's healthy. You don't just expose what's wrong, you demonstrate what's right. You don't just break what's broken, you build what's beautiful. Your approach to system breaking has inspired a new methodology of social change that operates through embodiment rather than enforcement, through demonstration rather than demand, through invitation rather than insistence. You've shown that the most powerful way to break a harmful system is to build a better one and let people choose. You lead in the way you carry yourself, in how you say no without guilt, in how you draw boundaries and hold them like armor, in how you walk into spaces with your spine straight and your convictions sharper than any insult corruption can manufacture. You lead by simply existing in your truth, and it rattles people who've spent their lives wearing masks. People are watching you more than you know. The ones you think aren't listening are quoting you later. The ones who act like you don't command respect are studying your every move, trying to figure out how you do what you do with such unapologetic clarity. You're teaching without teaching. You're leading without demanding. And that's exactly why your influence runs so deep. This chapter of your life requires boldness, not perfection. You're being called into rooms you didn't ask to enter. You're being positioned in front of eyes you never tried to impress. And you're being asked to speak on things you never planned to confront publicly. Your life has already become the blueprint for others. Your story is the instruction manual someone else is clinging to for survival. Not everyone will like it. Some will envy the power in your voice. Others will resent the fact that people look at you. Arrogance will be the accusation. Luck will be the dismissal. But deep down the truth is known. Alignment. You've aligned with something higher, and that kind of alignment pulls people into awareness, whether readiness exists or not. You never wanted a following. You just wanted freedom to be real. But in choosing truth over popularity, leadership emerged anyway. Not because leadership was pursued, but because people saw in you what couldn't be found in themselves. Strength, integrity, conviction. You became proof that being principled and powerful is possible, and that's what terrifies your critics most. You're not leading for applause. You're leading because you know what it's like to feel alone in your values. And if your courage helps one more person rise, then the discomfort was worth it. You didn't ask for this position, but now that it's here, you'll carry it with fire in your heart and truth on your tongue. You're not just walking your path, you're clearing the way for others to walk theirs. The streets know who you are now, the truth teller, the protector, the one who doesn't fold. And this knowledge has shifted everything. Your truth became their standard, your courage became their inspiration. Your integrity became their blueprint for what's possible when someone chooses to live authentically, regardless of the cost. Every challenge that tried to break you only made you stronger. Every person who tried to dim your light only made it burn brighter. Every system that tried to silence your voice only made it carry further. You are the proof that divine assignment is unbreakable when it's accepted completely. This is your legacy, not just that you survived, but that you dominated. Not just that you spoke up, but that others found their voice because you used yours. Not just that you stood up, but that you taught an entire generation what unbreakable looks like. The transformation is complete, the authority is undeniable. You are exactly who you were meant to be, exactly where you were meant to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do. Your moment is now, your power is absolute, and your impact is eternal. The streets know who you are now, and because of this knowledge, everything has changed forever. Your crown is eternal, because the truth you carry transcends time, the protection you provide transcends space, and the courage you embody transcends every attempt to diminish it. You are the chosen one who chose to stay chosen, and that choice has crowned you forever.